still waiting for a quorum, just to let everyone know who may be signed in that we're waiting for a quorum, and as soon as we have one, we'll start the meeting. Hi, Dee. Yeah. Tuesday, September 3rd, and we are at the Monroe County Plan Commission Administrative Meeting, and I'd like to call this meeting to order.
Okay, I'll go ahead and call the roll. Shannon Wright Randolph,
Here.
Jerry Pittsford,
Here.
Margaret Clement,
Here.
Scott Ferris,
Here.
Jeff Morris.
Here.
Dee Owens.
Here.
Okay, so we have 6 members attending and a quorum.
Okay, well, to begin the meeting, do you have any other announcements or anything that you'd like to make, Jackie? No? Okay, so the first item on the agenda is the CDO full draft that is dated August 27th.
Yes, so as we're making changes to this document, we just keep updating it. We try to update it about once a week or once every other week as we're making changes. So I just keep this on the agenda in case you all have further comments or questions for us as we're editing. Please let us know, or if you had anything you wanted to discuss today.
Not today.
Okay,
I'm still looking through the entire document that you submitted August 27th.
okay.
And what, do other members have any questions for planning staff or any items for discussion on the CDO full draft that was completed on August 27th?
Just very general, have you gotten any calls from the public about kind of the new CDO draft? And I guess, would you maybe just speak to how you help assist them, just kind of real high level?
Sure, that'll actually be, we have a public engagement update on number 3.
Okay, perfect.
I'll get to that.
All right. Well,
Okay, anything else? Okay, so we'll move on to item 2 of the agenda, and that is the CDO hearing, which will be held on September 24th. And if we'd like to hear more about the format, you know, and what we can do to help. Because I know that there could be throngs of people and crowds of people, or there, it may not be. But at the same time, we have limitations in the space and limitations in time. But everyone would have their 3 minutes. So if you would just walk us through how you'd like us to help you through that.
Sure. So we've kind of thought through how the meeting will look and how it will come together. And I think it'll be important for us to come up with some ground rules just for how we interact with the public. And then just among the board members, you know, if someone says something and you would like to ask them further questions, is it appropriate to engage with them for a long period of time? Or do you say, we'll come back to that at the end? So if there's a long line of people wanting to speak, you may have to think about that on the fly or just determine ahead of time. Do we want to engage with them with questions, or should we just point to them to talk to staff? So the way I think it would be best is if we, you know, we'll get there early. We're gonna have a few planners additional in the hallways before you go into the Nat U Hill room. We're gonna have the CDO maps posted for all the township areas, kind of like what we did for one of the listening sessions. And then we've also reserved the conference room right across the hall so that if people just aren't sure what's going on, they have just a lot of questions, before they make public comment, we'll just have a planner meet with them. We'll have our laptops, look up their property, see if we can answer their questions, and then have them go into the hearing with a little bit more substance to their, maybe some of their questions, or they get their questions answered and they can not stay if they don't want to. And then I'm thinking to start off the meeting, I'd be happy to do a staff presentation, maybe of what's new or what, how to read the document, just very high level, 15 minutes max is what I'm thinking.
That would be helpful.
We do have a CDO online survey on our website. And I could print out some of these. It's just a series of questions about their comments. If it's online, this is a big box for them to type in so I can leave more space. And we can collect this information for later so we can make sure we capture everyone's comments. So we'll have those printed and online. And then I think a quick presentation, I don't know if Jeff as president, if you want to kind of go over ground rules, everyone gets 3 minutes. Please direct your comments to the plan commission. If you have questions, instead go out to the hallway and meet with a planner. And, we're not really trying to engage everyone. That's kind of the thing I'm looking for, maybe from one of the plan commission members. And then we're also going to tell them that everything is getting compiled. And it's going to be at a later meeting that you all will decide whether that comment can be edits made to the document, or if we're going to, decide that that doesn't match with comprehensive plan, or if we're gonna say that that doesn't really match with our guiding documents for the county, we're not going to incorporate those changes. And then at a later meeting, aside from the hearings, you all will make a recommendation to the commissioners. And then at the commissioners, that's when the document becomes.
And when do we do that?
So I would suggest that we do have the following meeting dates held. So we have the 24th held. That's going to be the hearing. That's the date that was put on the postcards. We have the 1st and we have the 3rd. If by the 24th, you all continue the meeting to the 1st,
Yes.
and you don't get a lot of attendees, we could technically have a lot of things compiled either by the 1st or the 3rd for you all to start digesting that information and make a decision at that point. Otherwise, we will need to schedule a special meeting at some point, an administrative special meeting, because this took over our administrative meeting date.
Yes.
And our next public meeting, I think, is in September. Is it the 24th? Or sorry, in October. I think it's the 26th.
I have a question. My question, I look at things a little bit differently.
Mhm.
Okay, I would personally take, when do we think this will be ready for the commissioners to take a vote? What is that date? And what I would suggest that you use that date and then go back from that date. And of course, what we had talked about before is having this done before the holidays. Because when the holidays start, schedules go south pretty quick. And so when do you think that this will go in front of the commissioners for a decision?
I think that we could be ready for commissioner's decision late October, early November. I think that's doable, and we need both a work session and a regular session. So we need 2 weeks of commissioners' meetings because they meet
So I
every
would
week.
argue from a planning standpoint, that you plan for those 2 meetings to occur in the month of October.
Mhm.
And what you would do then is have a week fallback. In fact, that didn't work, and you could plan for November. That way you could get this all done by the end of October in a perfect world.
I would like to utilize, I think Tammy was showing me the meeting calendar for our regular scheduled plan commission session is October 24th. So I think at that meeting, if you were to close the public comment period, if you think that you would want to review the Excel spreadsheets of data, this is the comment, here's what this would translate to as a change. If you want to make a comment to have us incorporate that, that would probably need to be made earlier, and then on the 24th would give us time to incorporate all those changes, and then you all would send that up to the commissioners after.
It's just my thoughts. Somebody else could.
That's good ideas. I like your suggestions. Tammy had her hand raised.
I mean, part of it is staff being able to incorporate all the changes
We
and
wanna give you enough
digest all the information to get back to you guys.
And we want you to do what you have to do.
We just don't know how much information we're gonna end up with.
Yeah, it's hard to know how many people will show up and have comments that we need to incorporate into the document, but assuming that it's, minor to medium amount of information, I think, 2 weeks would be appropriate.
Okay, well, let's, I'm sorry, Mr. Enright Randall.
Sorry, I'm just trying to write down things so I can kind of try to be a little more prepared than I was at my last two meetings. So there we go. You're welcome. Sorry, got it. So a couple things just to back up maybe on the structure. And this is kind of maybe something as far as kind of laying out some of the ground rules. I think maybe identifying if you're not sure if you have a question, maybe go outside and work with the planner too. I think one of the goals is really trying to get them, one, comfortable, two, coming up with a question that is something that we're able to even address or entertain. So just kind of a thought there. The other one was, and I don't know how this would work, but I think it's a good opportunity, but it's a bit broader. Like, we have a lot of overlapping ordinances. So I think not just having other planner staffs to talk about planning questions, you're going to get a barrage of a lot of other questions. So why not maybe facilitate more of a robust ability for the public to engage with the county about their particular question? So like maybe having someone with stormwater, with highway, maybe even with the health office with this, because of the septics. Because it would be really cool, because then we can actually, help address those questions. They may not have a question that involves the CDO, so just an opportunity.
That's a good
And,
idea.
I don't know how you would facilitate that. I think we need cooperation, and I believe that, up to planning, but just kind of
Great
a
idea.
thought. And then I guess I totally understand the logistics and the goal of having, one public hearing for this. I'm somewhat of an outlier because my full-time job is here at the county, so it's not like me having to take too many extra steps to make myself available. But I'm just hoping, just generally, maybe we can at least extend it to 2 public hearings before we take action. But again, that'll be, the majority of the plan commission, how they see fit. But my goal is, get a good turnout for one meeting. It doesn't necessarily mean you won't get a good turnout for the second meeting. And there are, back to the logistics of everything, there are a lot of people juggling more than, myself to make myself available for 2 meetings. So to give them 2 options could be very beneficial. So that's it. That's kind of my thoughts. And outside that, thank you for all your effort. And yeah, it seems like we might be able to get this to the commissioners for adoption. And there's one other part to that might be helpful for Scott. Well, if the commissioner proposed any amendments to what we move forward, which may or may not happen, if he comes back to the planning commission, then there's a whole other process. I don't know, won't ask you to speak, or if you want to like maybe fresh up on that or whatnot, and then that'll give you another idea of what that expected timeline could be if that occurs.
That could be that fallback in November.
Well, that, and it just kind of gives you, I guess, a more comprehensive understanding of how that process goes, and if things occur there, then come back here, and then there's a cut of another timeline.
Well, that raised a question, but then I had another thing to share. The, when we send the document forward to commissioners for a vote, if there is a specific ordinance or portions of the ordinance that they don't like, they can either vote it up or down. They can't remove those. Is that correct? Do they remand it back to us?
My understanding is if they make it more strict, they do not have to bring it back to the plan commission. If they make it less strict, then it does have to go to the plan commission for a final vote. So they can, at a work session, say, you know, we want this to be stricken, we want this to be added, we want this to be. I think that they can do that.
Are you sure? And it'd be different because when I went through the city, it has to come back for any amendment, but we don't really vote on it.
Right.
We just chop it up and then like it moves forward. I'm not certain. That's why like,
I want,
that's kind of what I understand is it comes back to us, Jerry, but like we get to vote in favor of it or not, but those amendments stand and then it just goes through that
Why is that
process
vote
for
even
adoption,
relevant?
I
Why is
guess.
that vote even relevant?
Bureaucracy, and I might be skewing it, so I don't want to say I'm
I mean, if the
100%
commissioner's gonna
accurate,
do
but
something, they're gonna do something.
But I guess this is something good for us to understand more clearly, because I don't want to be incorrect, so.
Right. Well, if I can add to that, then I think we need absolute clarity. And I think that as part of our introduction to the public, receiving public comment, that we explain the process, that if indeed it is, we send it forward with a recommendation for approval and they can make it stricter, then I think the public needs to be aware of that.
It won't be in its final form, so keep staying engaged.
Right,
Yes.
because, you know, honestly, I think there would be a significant number of people who would be more concerned that it can be made stricter without input
Right.
than less strict.
And we have to send the postcards for a date and then thereafter, you know, we don't have to read, the commissioners are taking it and that's the notice requirements at the plan commission level, but that's not where it gets adopted.
Right, but I think nobody should leave with the question in their mind as to what this process is. And the most significant part is that the plan commission does not vote to approve
The final form.
a final form. That decision is in the hands of three elected public officials
I will
that
make
determine the zoning ordinance for the entirety of the remainder of the county. So, and then the other thing I wanted to raise is concerns number one, being somewhat disadvantaged in hearing, although I have it corrected. I want to be sure that we have a way to clearly identify the speaker's name. Because we have some people who come up and they do not enunciate their name. So if, you know, if a hand is raised or whatever, or if I or anyone else said, I'm sorry, I did not get the speaker's name. Could we ask for a repeat or a spelling? Or could we by default ask people to spell their last name? You know, we'll take their first name for granted. And there's a reason for this. And that is because I feel like in order to avoid a back and forth exchange between commission members and those people speaking, I think that is an extremely bad idea. That's my perspective. I'm not speaking for anybody else, and I'm more than willing for people to entertain their own ideas. But I think a back and forth exchange is a terrible idea. What I would prefer to do, and I've written it down here so I don't forget, is I'd like to have a card or a half sheet of paper where I have a space where, and if I have to do it just for myself, I will. But where I can write down the name of the speaker, the general topic of what they're addressing, slope restrictions, their property, ag zoning in general, you know, density or whatever, where I can put a topic area and then any specific comments, questions, or concerns that are raised in my mind by that speaker. Because if we had 15 speakers. At speaker 3, I might hear something that I think is really relevant and put it in my notes, and then it gets disappeared. You know, but if I have that index card, then I can say, hey, Jackie or Tammy or Drew or whoever, when so-and-so was talking on this,
I agree with that.
this question came to mind, and I would like for you to follow up on that for me. And because I don't think we need to be contacting citizens and saying, hey, when you talked about da, it raises this question in my mind. But having planners follow up on our behalf, or if the planning staff wants to say, I think it's a dumbass question, they can come to me and say, hey, Jerry, that's kind of a dumb question. You know, can we help you refine that question so we can get a better response? You know, and I mean that sincerely. I'm more than happy to have that clarification, because if I have a question in my mind that I can't articulate properly, it would be nice to have staff to intervene on my behalf so I don't ask a dumb question that's not well framed.
So I have a comment. First of all, that's good. That's a great idea. And if you can have a pre-printed sheet, you know, with those little categories, and give them to us so we don't have to.
Yeah.
And that would help you, because you're gonna be able to legitimately capture each comment by number. That's number 1, that's number 3, that's number 5, and this is what it was. That makes perfect sense to me anyway. So I agree with what Jerry said. What I think we should talk about just briefly, maybe you're gonna bring it up later, and I apologize if you were. This exchange between the citizens and the commissioners, where they're coming in, yes, they've been pre-screened, my terminology, not yours, outside, and they've kind of helped people develop whether or not they have a question or not.
Yeah.
Okay, but they do have a question, they come in, and now they're sitting over here at the podium, and they sign in and do whatever they're going to do, and off we go. Are we in the listening mode? Or are we truly gonna get into, well, there's how many people are on the board? We've got X number of commissioners who want to ask you questions. And where I'm going with that, it's a slippery slope. If you've got 60 people lined up out there, and I don't know how you capture all that data.
Right.
That becomes almost you're building a watch is what you're doing with data, and it gets complicated. So I think we should talk about whether or not we're going to engage with the public, or we're just going to listen to the public.
That's part of the ground rules discussion.
I know it is, but we should talk about it from
I think that's great.
from anybody.
Very sure, mine.
Yeah, I agree with you, is what I'm saying.
I don't think we should engage. I think we're in a listening mode, and the time to deliberate what Mr. Pittsford kind of described as a rubric that would be created by the name, the issue, et cetera, would be after you compile it in a spreadsheet.
Right.
And present it to us for deliberation on changes to the CDO.
Right.
Before we pass it on. But I don't know if it can be done at the moment. You know, is that what you're asking for, Mr. Pittsford? No,
I
okay.
think he's gonna give us index cards to say, you know, Sarah Cassidy came up, spoke and said, I would like to see that, you know, when there's changes made to the parking lot that you don't require islands or something, or the landscaping is too much, and you may have a question, well, what would you like to see? And then you would give that to me, and I would follow up with Sarah to say, hey, if we had a question, did you have a further idea of what you know,
I see.
where we can come up?
Or using your example, I might say, what options besides landscape islands can we consider from a land use planning perspective? So I would write the question, what other options are available? Then you're going to respond to me. But I might also have a question of what is she suggesting
Mhm.
in lieu of parking islands or islands and parking lots? And I hand that to staff, and staff would say, hey, that's a question that we can go back to her on. You know, she was talking in generalities, maybe she has something specific. And rather than Jerry Pittsford calling Sarah, you know, and saying, hey, I was intrigued by your comment, you know, and then staff might say, well, Jerry, here's what we can do,
Right.
you know, but we'll follow up with her and see if that's what she had in mind or whatever. But that takes Jerry out of the loop, and then we would have a report back session after this public hearing, regardless of how many questions that, or comments or concerns may
So
be
you get,
generated.
so you get 100 questions
Right,
and we don't ask anybody any questions as they present them to us.
right,
Okay, you do your research on the questions
right.
and you answer the questions.
Some of them might be comments, so someone may come up and say, you know, one thing we've heard is like, I don't like that there's a 25-year moratorium on sliding scale subdivisions. Well, that for me is very easy to say, okay, plan commission, here's the segment of this code, this is when it was enacted. The comment is, will you strike this?
Okay, so I have a thought on that. And so in this this is the whole method to which you're going to go through this drill of condensing this so it doesn't get out of control. That's what I'm concerned about.
Mhm.
Okay, and so if somebody brings up a question and it is something that you as the planner, okay, know the answer to, and it isn't something that needs to be clarified, it doesn't, they're not requesting a change to, they're really just asking a question because they haven't done a thorough review of this document. You as a planner could answer that question
Right,
right then and there, and that would take and get you out of the drill of later on having to respond and do all the paperwork to support that.
yeah.
Thoughts?
So there'll be questions, there'll be comments, and then there'll be, in my mind, statements, right? A question could be, I don't understand why there's only 16 zoning districts, you have 45, how did you do that? That's a question to me, and I can work with that person and answer that. A comment might be, you know, I don't like that 25-year moratorium, can we change it? A statement is, you know, there's not enough housing options in Monroe County. I'm not gonna be able to find the exact line of code that says, oh, here's
Simply
where.
say, I'm taking it for the record.
Yes, but I'm saying you'll see all of those, and I will only have answers maybe for some of those that relate to the code. But what our job is to translate what the person at the podium is saying into where does this fit into the CDO, and this is what they're asking to change.
I have just one or two suggestions, and I could be off mark. Are you going to be having any time on radio programs about the CDO?
We didn't have any planned.
Okay. Never mind, I don't know if it's necessary, but one thing that I think would be helpful is that paper copies of the latest version of the CDO could be dropped off at the libraries and at Smithville and at Ellettsville and Steinsville, just because there are so many older people who cannot access the internet.
We did that with Coke, and I will make sure that.
Yeah, but I don't know how you get the word out, maybe just on Facebook,
Maybe on the website, everyone got the QR code to go to that website.
those older people don't have, I don't use
Yeah.
it.
True. Okay.
I'm with it.
So,
I've made them before, but I don't use them.
Yeah, I just want really quickly to, just having been kind of through the process or anything for Jeff as the chair of the meeting, when somebody rattles off their 3 minutes and then drops, 2-3 questions at the end, it might be appropriate to say, hey, Jackie's captured your questions. She'll follow up with you, and that way we don't end up where somebody's extending their time by throwing questions out there and then trying to get into a give and take with Jackie or anybody else who may be in the position of responding. So, depending on when their question comes, I would encourage you to be able to say, you've used your time. You did raise some questions that we feel like you deserve an answer to, and there will be follow-up from staff with you, and then push it out.
I think that's a good idea. We're just gonna have to keep it moving along.
Right. And that's just, sharing that experience so you don't have to learn that on the fly. And you will be accused in those instances of trying to shut down public comment.
Right.
Because there will be people who will filibuster in that fashion, that for whatever reason, they have an axe that they want ground while the wheel's spinning. So, and you just have to bear in mind that you're not suppressing public comment, you're limiting people to their turn.
Right. No, that makes sense. I did have one follow-up question. You talked about asking people to spell their last name. I like the idea. I actually had more trouble hearing people on Teams than I do in person, just because of the audio in that room. I almost always have to read the captions. Would you be open to the idea of using some leeway when I go over ground rules saying we may ask you to spell your last name?
Absolutely.
So if it's Smith,
Right,
we all heard it, but
right,
I won't ask him to spell it.
right, exactly, yeah.
For the transcript.
Comment, what-
The clarity of the transcript.
Right. What we used to may refer to as common sense guidelines.
And I think it's important up front that you stipulate that this is a listening. This is not a public exchange of thoughts here. We are listening and the staff will take and respond in due time. Something like, however you want to do that, but
There will be another, I think you'll close the public hearing at the end of whatever hearing we get to, first, second, third. You'll want to say, we've closed the public comment on this. And then when it does go to a subsequent meeting where you forward it to the commissioners, you won't reopen that comment again unless you would choose to do so.
And even though I don't get the sense that there's much acrimony in the public right now, do we have a security presence or a police presence planned for this?
We can inquire about that and get that.
I think if you're anticipating significant numbers,
Sure.
you know, not in fear of civil distress, but it only takes one disgruntled person to create a harrowing situation. And it's good to have somebody there in case. I'm not quite as able to run my presence as I used to be.
On the, you know, there, and Jeff, you're so with it and you do such a good job, but on the comments, like, we're here to listen, because the phrase listening session has been so worn out all over the place and people are tired, just, you know, look up other words for it.
Like you're getting it on the record.
Yeah, this is
Or
your
this is
comment
your
to
public
the
hearing and your comments are gonna be on the record.
Public hearing's not overused, and that is the legal literary term.
And we also want to listen, or not listen, but we're here to have your input.
Consider.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so it was any word but listening, because it's getting kind of overused and underapplied.
And my understanding is, you know, we compile all this public feedback and all the feedback we've received to date. That's a lot of information for you all to go through. We're not going to make changes to the CDO from these hearings. We don't want to just start editing things into the
Right.
document unless it was like, oh, there's a typo on page 5. Yes, I will fix that.
I have to reflect upon the annexation hearings
Yeah.
where I actually presented the Area 6 stuff
Mhm.
at 11:30. I mean, this is really way into the evening hours. And you're limited to, as you well know, you're limited to a specific amount of time to say whatever you're going to say. And then what happened at the city council meeting is that those folks talked for forever,
Mhm.
going back and forth amongst themselves. And some folks were doing quite a bit of grandstanding. And so you would take, what I'm getting at is you could have one person making a statement that resulted in a 30-minute discussion because
Right,
the counselor, or in this case, the commissioner, are going back and forth like this.
right.
And when you're not in agreement with one another, that can get really,
Yes, time
really
consuming. Yes.
and I'm suggesting we don't want anything like that to happen.
Right, write it down on your, yeah, for us to follow up. And then at a subsequent meeting, we do have to decide, you know, we can say so much, you know, we can say, so-and-so came up, they spoke, they want this text stricken. And then at that meeting, when you guys are actually considering that, whether that should stay or go in the ordinance, then I welcome that discussion. But I think that's after the hearing portion.
And I have to say how proud I am to be with my colleagues here and also with the planning staff, because everyone here is authentic in terms of really, you know, the process and what we're charged to do, and with listening and being open-minded, open-hearted. I think that we have a lot of integrity, so that really matters. And I know we can all think of that at our meeting, because that's the most important thing, is our integrity as a county and as our plan commission.
Jackie, can I make just one further request? When you make bound copies for the elderly of the community, would you include me and give me a bound copy of whatever you give for the elderly?
Yeah, if anyone wants a printed copy at the meeting, you want it at the meeting or before the meeting? Or
Yes.
I'd like another one.
Okay.
In advance on one side. I can't do the
on one side?
front and back.
Okay.
We
When,
can do front and
I
back.
could do front.
okay, when do you, because we'll keep updating it, so when would you like the latest? You just want to keep printing every
When you
version?
think you have the final draft,
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
whenever that might be.
okay.
3 copies.
And if we-
The copies off at the
quite frankly-
library.
And quite frankly, if I need to come over and pick it up, I will come over. and
Me
pick it
too.
up.
Okay,
Yes.
I'd like mine delivered to my house,
With a cup.
like the Amazon guy.
Yeah, and you want a fancy binder too. Yeah.
I hate binders. That was one of the things I looked forward in retirement, was stowing away every 3-ring binder I had or finding another home for it. So no.
Yeah.
I think Jeff was good. Okay.
Oh, I just might miss this part. So outside of then the public coming and speaking, there'll be some type of collecting their name and contact information happening on the side. Did I miss that
We're
part?
gonna explain it.
Okay. Cause I was wondering, okay, sorry.
So I think when everyone comes in and we start the meeting, you know, this could be part of the ground rules for Jeff and I to discuss. And I think Jeff was gonna write up something and I would reflect my presentation so we're not overly redundant. But I think it's a good idea. Someone had raised this at a prior meeting to say like, you know, raise of hands if you wish to speak or get some sort of head count, because if it's 3 minutes per person and we're gonna end the meeting, you know, if you all want to end the meeting at 9 PM at the latest, or, you know, 10 PM at the latest, and we have way too many people there to get to that time period, we may at that point announce the next meeting date to say, you know, if you were going to be behind the 35th person, I'm sorry, you could stay and listen to everyone here, or you could come back on October 1st virtually or in person. So, because I think there was another meeting that people had said they waited all that time and then they were like, okay, we're cutting the meeting off at this time. So, you know,
That's
if it
nice.
gets to that point, we could announce it in the beginning to try and give people that understanding of the next meeting, or if there will be next. Just want to mention that, but we will have the CDO survey online and printed. We'll also have the sign-in sheet because it's hearing. We'll make sure to capture people's phone numbers and email addresses.
So the survey, you might want to explain how we're planning to use the survey during the hearing and like what it looks like once we have captured it.
But I can do that, but basically, this survey presents itself in pie charts and stats, basically. But this is able to merge into a spreadsheet. So once people are talking, we're actually gonna be digitizing their comment in real time. So we'll also have your comments after the fact if it's, you know, a printout sheet that you're taking notes, and we can add to that. But we're going to try and write as much as we can verbatim what their comment is on the CDO. And then we'll have to come back later and read all of your comments on that particular situation and see if we can come up with a translated change in the ordinance. Yes.
Okay, I assume this is part of the public record on the hearing,
Yes.
and then I don't want to assume too much. But I would request that those things, that form with all the comments and questions, everything as the final thing, go forward to the commissioners along with the CDO,
Yes.
with the request that they review it in conjunction with the CDO.
Yes. My understanding would be that would be part of the record, like exhibits almost, public comment. A lot of people are actually filling this out now, so.
We have it. I don't know if you guys can see this.
Share it on yours.
Can I share it?
But you see what I'm saying, you know, that way I know that we would have it and everything, and it would quote unquote be available for the commissioners, but I think it should go in tandem with the CDO to the commissioners.
So this brings up another question, Jackie. So I'm Jackie. And we're now at the commissioners. This is the approval. This is the decision on whether or not it's going to take and be approved or not. Are you going to give, I assume you're going to give a presentation to the commissioners. You're not expecting them to sit up here. Okay, let's go ahead and start on page one and go over any changes to page one.
Right.
So you're gonna, I know,
It'll be high level.
gonna be a high level briefing that we came, we met, this is what we found out.
Yes.
This is well, the general document is laid out. And oh, by the way, we've got a survey over here with feedback
Right.
from the citizens, et cetera. And it's there for your review and comment as required. I mean, you're gonna have to do something like that as well, yeah. I mean, that makes sense.
So,
Because you wouldn't expect them to sit there, Jerry, and assuming you've got 100 pages of survey comments, you wouldn't expect them in a meeting to go through page by page by page.
No, what I'm saying is, I think as they consider the CDO, they should likewise consider the public comment as documented in that. form.
Yeah, prior to the meeting.
I would like to think that the two commissioners who are not on the plan commission would be in attendance at this meeting, but that may be asking a little bit more than what they're willing to give, and since their salary is so low.
Are you gonna invite them?
we will, yes. We'll, set up a notice similar to what we did for the August 6th meeting where they may attend in a quorum fashion to notice for the county council. And
Let's say been actually involved with this thing. This is a complicated.
Yeah.
I think we should acknowledge every elected county official who's in attendance at that meeting. And I don't mean that sarcastically or with even this lightest bit of humor.
Yeah, Penny and Lee attended the public open sessions in addition to Julie. You know, I thought that was helpful.
I can make it very clear. I think it's only fair in the staff presentation, other than what's new, just to describe the process. As much as I have to date, because we don't know how many hearings we will have, but I can at least state what I know at that time, so people are clear.
Mhm.
And yes, Tammy's sharing on the screen just the comments that we've received so far. This is getting into the next item on the agenda, but just to date, we've received a lot of calls.
Yeah, so these are the actual comments people are dropping in. And then we get some other like the addresses, the names, we have some statistical information of how they filled it out. If they live in the
Can you
county.
make that full screen? That's-
So how was the comment submitted online, by phone, because we're taking phone calls from the postcard and so our planners are digitized.
Some people call in, so our planners are filling this survey out directly.
I
Capturing their
Nice.
actual like comments, and then we do have a whole running list of just questions, and we're answering questions as well, but it's separate from this.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and then we're asking if you're a resident, or if they're in the town of Ellisville, Bloomington. No, they don't live in the county, or they do, but they work or recreate. So we just
Yes.
kind of came up with some relevant, just a couple of statistical questions that we thought would be helpful. And then lumping it into like
If they
these
happen to.
basic categories. So right now, the
Some of them are
zoning
added.
map by the zoning map is the big one right now out of the 15 surveys.
Right.
I will say just for the record, the last one, someone posted other and typed that in themselves, so we didn't have that as a pre-typed out option. So, yeah, trying.
Just, this is pretty cool, I guess. More of the sensitive data, like telephone numbers, addresses is gonna be somewhat redacted.
You would
Because we
take
can
that
put
out. this all into a spreadsheet then and just
Right.
hide the columns that we want.
So I'm saying for internal purposes, have an address.
Yeah.
Like that with our parcel map, get some type of mapping of where maybe some of these.
We have time.
are. Well, after the fact, I think it'd be surface great, like, analytical type data or analysis, I guess. But, my point being is if you are collecting the addresses, that'll be an easy correlation and it'd be kind of cool maybe to see a map of where you get a lot of feedback because of where people are engaged.
Yeah, right.
And, you know, And then I guess my other question goes with kind of, the telephone number, contact info.
Mhm.
Are planning commission members going to be able to get that? And it's kind of in line with what Jerry was kind of discussing and where if we have like a follow-up question to their question, and I know Jackie is going to do a follow-up, but then, we might open up a Pandora's box with multiple questions and more feedback. So like if it really jumps out to the plan commission member, and if we're really only going to do listening at the hearing session, but one of these things you want to follow up on, I think it would be neat or nice if we had the ability to reach out to that public's commenter and have that conversation with them directly, because there could be multiple follow-ups and such. And I think that's a good balance to know that like the plan commission is engaged with the public as much as the staff, if they want to follow up on any particular comment, question or statement that's made.
But Ron, you're assuming you'd have consensus on what the comment that you're providing back to the citizens.
I'm assuming absolutely nothing, because I tend to follow up with a lot of people and I have no idea how it's gonna go.
See, I would offer a different point. I think that the gatekeeper needs to be the planning department.
Yeah.
That way you
It's hard, I guess it's hard for me just due to the fact that I serve as a public servant, so I do want to have that more hands-on engagement. And I fully understand and respect your position too, so if I try to parse out some of what my goals are with being directly engaged with the public and.
I guess I
Question
wanna-
into streamlining this into a efficient meeting. I'm gonna defer mostly to my colleagues, but that's just.
My point is that I talked to Tron and he told me,
Oh, I know.
and that's what I'm trying to get away from. And the way you maintain the consistency in the feedback is through these folks. I mean, that's my.
I
We
guess
can control everything that you guys do outside of the hearing, but if you guys want to come up with a consensus on ground rules for each other, even if that doesn't get
Okay.
announced.
Want to make sure we're on the same sheet here.
And I guess if it really matters, I could just. Like the one-off thing, I guess that's just where my thought has is. I like the ability to have that one-on-one engagement, but I understand that's not the ground rules we're laying out, so. What was an alternative for me to kind of still maybe achieve that, but I think. I'll just address that if I really feel strongly about it, and I won't go until when I hear some of the comments and feedbacks from the people, so.
I'd like to know from staff, what has been the tone of the people calling in? Are they inquisitive? Are they angry at all? Or wait, after you,
I'd say, I mean, I don't hear all the phone calls, but I think that most of the time it's maybe a little bit of concern. And then once they start getting their questions answered, then it's like, oh, okay, I'm good.
okay,
How about developers?
We've heard from some overarching organizations. I know the Bloomington Economic Development Corporation is going to do a listening session on, I think, September 12th. They've invited us to it. But I really have been trying to say, we're working on the CDO draft and we need people to come to the hearing. I don't want anyone to misconstrue prior meeting as a hearing. So we're trying to redirect people to come to our meeting. And I think that maybe that larger group, like Building Associates, Bloomington Economic Development, Chamber of Commerce, they may be hearing more, and they're nice enough to give me any information that they have. Hey, I've been hearing this, and I'll be like, okay, thank you. Do you have a contact?
So what is the purpose of the BEDC meeting?
They're
You can
trying
speak to them, but do you
to,
know what the purpose is?
according to the invitation that I received by email today, they say that they're holding a listening session to come up with a white paper that will be submitted at the hearing.
this is like
That's a
the
Bloomington
ROI thing.
The Bloomington Economic Development
Okay.
Corporation is trying to come up with like comments of their membership and bring it.
Yeah, I was wondering if we should invite the other municipal planning commissioners as well. Let them know that we're having a public hearing and their presence is welcome, just as a courtesy more than anything else.
We have
Yeah.
been working with the city. We do like
So
quarterly meetings with them. We let them.
The city is in like Ellisville?
No, that's the
Oh,
town.
you mean
Yeah,
the town?
I,
Oh,
They do.
okay.
I don't think this is the city's CDO, you know, I think this, we're having a hard enough time getting this
I
done.
just,
so you're
I
invited,
just think that an invitation for them to know what's going on would be fine. And I also think this chart would be really nice too. How are you feeling today?
So, Scott had a question.
Yeah.
this is a dangerous slippery slope. It really is. I mean, if you do understand the makeup of the BEDC and who goes to these meetings. And it's the rest of the community, all the way from the chamber to the, and so on and so on and so on. And they're there. And so they're going to have a separate meeting.
I've encouraged them to come to the hearing.
They're going to have a separate meeting that essentially dissect this document. And you've been invited to attend that. Are you giving a presentation?
They asked me to come and present. I am not going to do that. I will not be.
I would say that's a dangerous slippery slope because then all of a sudden you're having to explain.
Which I would not mind that. I just would worry that people would come to the BDC event and not to the hearing. And I really want people to come and speak to the planning commission members, not
Yeah, they're
expect me to be the messenger.
They're
director.
acting as a surrogate for the planning department. And by taking the comments from a certain sector of the community. And, you know, it's been like this from the beginning and they really have overstepped their bounds.
So here I am with BEDC and I'm not only am I unhappy with this, but just that's an example. But I'm going to take and challenge this section by section. And I'm going to take and come back to the county and say, this is where it's flawed.
With the white paper.
With a
They're
white
coming-
paper.
Supported
And
by
how-
Which anyone in the public can do too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is a body.
Yeah.
That's a body.
Sure.
Made up of a lot of pretty powerful groups here in Bloomington.
Yeah.
In Bloomington, okay, who may not necessarily agree with this. And the city is going to be involved with that too.
Yeah.
And you know they're going to be. For those folks who understand city politics. And
Well, and just remember as as the elections come up, that those are bodies that are organized and funded by the state too. In some instances, the economic development commissions are backed by the state.
okay, so I'll play stupid here. Okay, what's your point?
But, you're basically saying that you're coming at us as an opposition. We're government funded and they're government funded. They've got their interest in supposedly we're at cross purposes, but they're all funded by the same organization. How does that work? How is that?
That's where I get into, so what? I mean, okay, thank you very much.
But how is that effective?
It's not effective.
Okay, that's all I said.
That's where I'm going with this. What you're doing is, to me, this is a terrible slippery slope. And I, I won't make the next statement. I'll keep that to myself. I'm just saying that I
Anything
just,
we receive, white paper, comment, emails, surveys, all of that gets compiled.
a one-page white paper that said, this is really a good first start.
Sure.
Okay, which is really a bad thing to say. Something is 4 years in that. But this is what we think you need to do with respect to put things more in line with what's happening in the areas around the county, like the city of Bloomington, which is the slippery slope. And to me, that is, wow, I think,
So I would just go into that spreadsheet and then their comments get made just like everybody else's and
you're gonna have to wear a bulletproof vest when you go to that meeting, a figure of speech.
so I won't be attending the 12th because I want them to come to the 24th and I've made that very clear. I am adding any
I hope they don't make a
tutorials
statement
online.
that we've invited the county
Yes.
to give a presentation.
I'm sure they will. So where is your position? I guess I kind of get a sense of reading the room, but I'm just gonna ask direct that. Like, you rather see us more engaged is a feeling I'm getting, or that this is just a lot and we better be prepared, or because we've had this conversation and we've had it numerous times. One big advocate of just elaborating on big was Bernie Garritas prior, you took over his service to the board. Which, thank you. And thanks Bernie as well for his service. And it was a hard conversation. I've had a couple of different side conversations about this. One with Jackie Nestor Jellin. Yeah, two last names. I like it. But I don't have to say yours as much as mine, where, you know, they asked us to be engaged or doing these things. I had a conversation, and really with everything going on and the timeline and everything, you were like, it just doesn't seem like a good fit right now. And I agree, you know, I'm really trying to support planning's initiative moving forward. But I also agree that a lot of the feedback I've gotten is this is creating some disdain, distrust, and also I've heard the other side of the conversation that it really seems like they're trying to, you know, propose ideas that are really kind of the planning commission's, you know, purview. So it's a tough one. And I would hate to continue to perpetuate this, honestly. It could really compound into a larger issue if we don't address it. And I'm wondering if we could ask them to reschedule their listening for after the 24th, engage in the public, and then possibly come as a planning commission to determine if it is of interest to engage with them after our first public hearing, because I feel like the room was split last time this conversation came up. And I don't think we're doing ourselves any favor of just kind of sidestepping it, but there's also a lot of other things that got brought up that, like, maybe it looks like we're extending, you know, extra privileges and things to these organizations. But there's not too many organizations that are really like, hey, we have something to say. Do you want to hear us? And now it's gotten to this part where they're doing their own listening meetings, and they've done it with a couple other ordinances just recently too. And they've actually successfully got a lot of folks in that room and had a good discussion. So there's my
So let me
part.
let me respond a little bit. I'm a firm believer in communication.
Okay.
Matter of fact, as an outsider, because I was gone for 40 years and coming back to Bloomington, I will tell you that we had plenty of communication decades ago. We've lost all of that. What's going on between these various bodies, and I'll just say the city and the county, it's like this. And they're not communicating very well. As an outsider, I can say that. And that disturbs me greatly, because I'm a big one for getting people together. And I used to, and I was in the arms control business, and we call it the elements of common ground. And you always start with the elements of common ground and build out from that. So what do we agree upon? Okay, and it may be that's all you agree upon, but that's okay, because you had communication and a two-way dialogue. So I'm a big fan of the communication. I don't see a whole lot. By opening up the various bodies, the plan review committee, the ordinance review committee, and I don't know about zoning, but the BEDC folks and the RDC folks were invited to those meetings. They sat in a room with us. Fernandez sat in a room with us. Okay, and so on and so on. They've had the opportunity sitting in the room. And yes, we had the formality of the agenda and stuff like that, but you also have an opportunity to exchange things. There's sidebars all over the place. That's part of the communication. Now, what I'm hearing, if we're having a different, separate forum where I'm the BEDC and I'm going to take and stick this up in the air and say, okay, folks, here's our chance to take and carve it up.
That's what they're doing.
And to develop a white paper and present it to the county for the things that we don't like. I think that is a dangerous,
We can't stop it.
slippery slope, and it brings legitimacy and more lack of communication and butting heads between the city and county. It's a train wreck.
Oh, well, I'd like to say something.
Okay, that's enough. I'll be.
I'd like to say something, okay, in terms of, the train wreck. You know, I don't appreciate other bodies taking responsibility for the purview of our responsible work. I don't like them coming to other bodies coming up with housing estimates that may or may not be true. I don't like other bodies taking over our CDO. I don't like other leaders of other bodies that are supposed to exist to attract business to a wonderful community, criticizing the executive leaders of our community in public forums. And they've been doing that nonstop. And as a woman, hearing this come from male leaders, you know, attacking our female commissioners, it is disgraceful. It's disgraceful to me. The people who participated in that have no credibility, and they have disqualified themselves for attracting business to Monroe County and Bloomington. And they should no longer be in the positions they hold because it is disgraceful. There's nothing that they're working on together. They're just attacking our exceptional planning department. They're putting out propaganda and then accepting our exceptional planning department for not accepting the propaganda. And then they're criticizing our exceptional dedicated and devoted leaders. And all the while trying to further special business interests. And I find that a disservice to our residents in the county.
So using this as a premise, okay, how do we take and move through this and do damage limitation on with respect to what potential?
I have a comment on that.
Yes. Me?
When I hear outside groups make commentary, the way I look at it is that's just an individual commentary. They're welcome to comment. Obviously, members of the community, that's fine. But I give it no more weight than I would give a person coming in from Highland Village just saying that, you know, I don't want my taxes raised or whatever. I think that we need to reframe it as not them trying to tell us what to do, but them having input into what's going on. We treat it as a piece of input and we move on. I agree with Margaret that it's unfortunate that they choose to make name calling and so forth. That's not necessary. People that are working on these things are doing it for the public good and for the future of our county. And I think that's a really important piece that we always need to keep at the back of our minds.
Very helpful, Dee. Thank you.
To finish my thought. I know, I agree with everything you just said. Perfect. But how do we navigate through this? Do we treat it just like, thank you very much for your input?
Have we responded to that ROI housing study, or have we not had time, or?
We did send them edits.
Did they
And
incorporate your edits?
the person that was in charge of that, I think they had a turnover. I'm not sure if it got updated yet.
Can we have a copy of what you sent them?
Sure.
Because it's important that we know that they received it and that we don't necessarily agree with their report. Because they already have mentioned it.
I saw it today.
Yeah, today
It
and
was one way B squared or something.
that's right.
Mentioned in one of the
Yeah, it was in the announcement of the need for more affordable housing and the project that they're gonna build over
I
by.
just don't want you to get into a slippery slope where you're having to defend as opposed to, thank you very much for your input.
I think there's a fine line there where like, you know, we're not, you know, necessarily working to the way they want us to conduct business, but we also have the opportunity to help guide this. So to really try to narrow that gap or close that gap, our only way is to be involved to a certain extent. I guess the oldest analogy there is you kind of have to take the bull by its horns at one point, or we're going to be, you know, stuffing that bullpen with it. And it's a tricky situation, and I totally understand kind of all sides of it, and I probably a vast amount of sides I don't fully understand, but what I've heard discussed, I understand those points. And I do think we need to figure out a better way to engage and to Dee's point, like, I feel the exact same way. I don't want to give any special privilege to anyone more than the next person. And, but we need to figure out a way to start engaging in with those people like we would if they just walked into the office.
Yeah. We've offered them.
I know you have, it's just,
Yeah.
it's gotten pretty back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So we're talking about a fall for, if you do that, it's now coming to the forefront because we're talking about the hearings and the adopting phase. And it would really be concerning to when they're first in, it's like, we invited the county here and they didn't show up. And there's 200 people in the room, even if I know we don't need to pander like that, but it does make a statement, and it's a pretty loud statement. And even if we were just there to say, we're here just strictly to say, come on the 24th and you leave.
Yeah, because
We're there.
that was my recommendation, like, and then my job.
Yeah, exactly. And,
all.
Let's remember, we have, there's more, but there's two major data points with respect to the dealings with the city and the county. All you gotta do is look at what they did with the convention center and how all that's been going down. And the jail. And this very well could be another one with respect to the way in the city and the county engage and deal with one another.
So I've received an open invitation to the BDC meeting. We've had very,
Why don't you-
respectful correspondences back and forth to say, I really would like people to come to the 24th. Can you please postpone this till after? Because that's what they originally told me. They asked me maybe 3 times in communication. I said, let's wait until it gets adopted. I would be happy to meet because I think then it's important to say,
That's good.
this is how you use this document. But they resisted. They said, no, people need to be educated on how to read this document so that they can come prepared on the 24th, which I agreed would be good. And said, please bring them to our office. We'd love to educate them in our office and get them ready. We've been able to keep up with every single call. This
That's good.
item, 69 inquiries, 82. We're up to 82 as of today, 14 online responses, coordinated with
You're
multiple.
absolutely spot on. You're doing a damn fine job on keeping everybody informed and up to date and answering questions. And others don't need to do that for you. And that's what they're
Trying to do.
trying to do. And so I can do my job.
Mhm.
I can do my job. Thank you very much. Any questions, inquiries, direct them to us and be more than happy to take and address them.
And the plan commission is also invited to attend that event. So if you want me to go and I can say on behalf to say, please show up at the September 24th hearing, I will be in the back listening. But I will feel at that point compelled when people are saying things that are incorrect to interject.
You can get a hard question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's okay. I will
Well, except
for
that
questions rather than.
they continue to come from the same source, and they're exerting a full court press, and the public needs to have some chance to,
Sure.
it needs to be.
I would ask that you postpone their meeting, ask that you request they postpone their meeting.
I will
That
ask
makes
that
a
again.
lot- That makes a lot of sense. That way we've already had the discussion.
Sure.
We don't really have another meeting to really discuss this unless you just been at the exec meeting and it seems necessarily to do, but I would say if you did go and you did just, and they don't postpone and you just told them about the public hearing and then said, I'm instructed to leave after this because we want to have you at the hearing and, just due to consideration and making it not seem like I'm not available, I want you to contact me at the planning office and where I will make myself available and then you leave. I would recommend not staying there at the end of the meeting. They're probably gonna have it recorded like they did the stormwater ordinance one, I would assume, so you could watch that, but I think I don't know, maybe we can wait or see, or just let you to defer how you want to handle it yourself, but
She's got it.
I do think this is a worthwhile conversation to have and bring some consensus.
Jackie, you've got it. Just curious for this, I haven't been to a BEDC. I know other folks have. And I know people who attend, and I know what normally comes out of those meetings because people have told me. Do the county council and the county commissioners attend that meeting ever? I bet they're invited on the board.
Penny is on the board.
Hilton.
Penny is the
I
delegate,
don't know this, you're
Yeah.
educating.
and Cheryl normally goes.
Cheryl normally goes, yes. At the stormwater panel, it's at least
We had
three.
five planners,
Five planners, all
all the
with
city departments there.
utility.
Cheryl was there.
So it was a good representative. Well, we actually stayed after, which was telling all the government bodies stayed after and said, they said, please stay and ask questions to the, staff here. And everyone left after.
But you have
So,
political
we were
top
there.
cover in the room if you need it.
Yeah, we were
You
there.
have a county commissioner, you have county council.
It was full. It was a full room. So they were able
That's what I
to
mean.
attract people. Yeah.
I don't wish to be anybody's defender or advocate in this, but when I hear the term Economic Development Commission and I look at county land use zoning ordinance, there's overlap. Economic development is intrinsically connected to land use. Permitting processes is also part of it. And to not understand a fierce advocacy from an economic development commission that derives its funding from agencies that are funded by state money and not recognize their part as a above individual citizen basis is it doesn't make sense. Whether we like what they're saying or we like who they are, or we like their mission or whatever, when you look at their website, county government has a presence on that board. The school corporation has, both school corporations, Ivy Tech, they derive their funding from grants from those organizations who seem to have a significant interest in the way land use is done in a county. That goes beyond the individual property owner is concerned. So whether certain folks within planning or in the plan commission or within any elected county office considers them adversarial or not, I think you have to recognize that they have an advocacy role that is implicit in their name. So
I would agree with that, Jerry, but I think that there's a difference between advocacy and adversarial behavior.
I don't disagree with that at all, Dee. I think you're right. And I think it's unfortunate that personalities and egos and
Right.
some people's version of what success is versus what other people's version of success collide in such a public fashion, and they can't find common ground. I think that's the root of the disagreement. I think if you want a good illustration of how well Monroe County as an entity plays with one another in interagency, all you have to do is travel up 69 and see the Morgan County corridor and what NDOT did with them with the cooperation of Morgan County versus what you see as you come into Monroe County and see what Monroe County managed to get in cooperation with NDOT on the aesthetics package.
NPM.
They're two glaringly different results, and it's that way all up and down 69.
That's a very good point.
So but when we receive anything from any entity, even with the BDC, I've offered, if I need more tutorial videos online, I think from staff's perspective, it is, if you have questions or your members have questions, I bet everyone has a question. And why not, I've recorded 3 tutorial videos. We've put more like how-tos on the website. We're trying to make it so that as they get questions, we can point them to content in the same place for everybody. But yeah, when they submit a white paper or comments, you will be seeing all of those and you'll have to make a direct response as you would with any other person's comment to say, yes, we're going to address this in this place in the ordinance, or we don't think this is the right time to put this in, or we disagree with this, you know, that you'll be having to do that in the same fashion as with any other comments.
I would like to say formally on the record that I really would love and to have a shared vision, shared goals, shared abilities and shared responsibilities and shared enthusiasm for projects that lead to the overall betterment of our county and the economic development of our county and the production of more of meaningful jobs. And I have to say that if someone comes with a proposal that is sound and it's not going to inquinate our area and that will produce jobs that will help people, you know, let's work together, you know, but I don't want to hear just, it's because we don't have enough housing that we don't have jobs. No, get to work, bring in the jobs and let's work together as we all go forward. You know, if you've got a big proposal.
Another solution here too. Big picture. 4 year. You all have been working on this 2017. And it's a good document. You know, I brought this up at an earlier meeting that as far as my standard is 80%. If you're 80% right in this document, it's a damn good document. And the 20% can be addressed later, okay, with amendments. I'm not talking before the commissioner or after the commissioners. I'm talking about after it's published. That's what amendments are for. And so if you are to get something of substance in a white paper from the BEDC or an outside agency that brings up, you know, did you guys think about this? And it's a pretty big elephant and it needs to be addressed. Absolutely. Thank you very much. We'll carry it, we'll take care of it, and we'll discuss it as a future amendment to the document. And to me, that's how you get it to the next step without getting into this quote adversarial unquote environment where people are butting heads, which I don't like in our community at all. Is there's just far too much of this stuff.
I will say though that disagreements can lead to good ideas. I mean, even within the planning staff, we have disagreements on how certain sections should be written out. And I think based on those disagreements, you really boil down to what's the goal? How do we argue this is important or not important to put into this ordinance? And so if you all can take that as a plan commission and, you know, take that attitude, I think scoring things in terms of priority, this needs to be done now, this needs to be done in a future amendment. Those are obviously not guarantees to the public. So
It's a process.
it's a process. But, you know, if we can get it to a spot where we're listening to everyone's comments and being able to treat everyone respectfully in person and make sure that we're transparent in the process, I think that's really
You got all the right comments, Jack.
be transparent.
It's almost like single party governance is a bad idea.
Jerry, you just didn't throw that.
Did I say that out loud?
You didn't just.
I'm sorry. I thought that was in my head.
Yeah, okay.
So yeah, if you hear, if you know, send stuff our way. If you hear about anything, if you want us to do anything different, if you're wanting to pass along a comment from my neighbor, ask me a question, pass it our way, and we'll be happy to try.
I get a
to-
question. I sent them to you.
Yes.
So sorry, trying to figure out what is the next. That was a long discussion and what is our next, like I've heard
For the
a couple
BEDC
things kind of thrown out there and I'm fine with letting Jackie use her discretion, or also what I heard was we formally asked them to postpone the meeting so we can conduct the public engagement and then bring this to the plan commission for their determination of how we would then coordinate with them. We formally ask them to postpone it for after the public engagement, and then Jackie can then determine the best way to move forward with reestablishing that relationship. Those are kind of the two floating things I heard, and I think it would have to be, well, Dee's here, so every five of us would all have to come to a consensus on here to like actually make it a formal thing. And I think us taking formal action starts to show us recognizing the need to reestablish this relationship with all of the goals and concerns and discussions that we've had with making sure that we understand each other's roles and how we can be more supportive. I think is that a first olive branch in my opinion. Sorry.
Not right after they started calling the commissioners names. I
Right,
just,
but what we would be doing would be formally asking them to postpone it.
Well, do we need to take and formalize that? Do you need for us to tell you to do that?
I don't need a vote. So what I heard is to request first, maybe a third time, that they were postpone the meeting. I can do that formally in writing. And if they disagree and they're gonna still have the meeting, I think that the most that I've heard is just go ahead and go at the very beginning, make an announcement, September 24th, 5:30, the Nat U Hill Room. The website is here. Please, I'll be listening to the recording and awaiting your white paper. Looking forward to hearing your discussion and questions later. And then,
And make sure that Kenny and Cheryl, your two elected officials, aware of that. So
Okay.
if they need to chime in to give the political top cover to what you said, I mean, that's,
I would just like to be on the record, saying that I think the decision to attend or not to attend, to send a letter requesting they postpone it or not is a function of the planning director. And I think the planning director, as a professional, has every right to decide how she wishes to approach that herself. This is my individual take, and I support her in any decision she should make.
I'm good with that too. I just wanted to bring some understanding to how.
the other thing, Jackie, is, what I was gonna say is, this is your process, or the county's process. This is not their process, this is your process.
exactly,
And thank you very much for your input, but it's still our process.
yeah.
But that's with all different parties involved and everything that was discussed, because we are talking about how other executive offices have been impacted. Also, things that are germane to this with, you know, some difference of opinions of studies. You know, it's a lot of outside interest here, and I guess I want to affirm what they're saying is that I fully think this is your call. To navigate all of that is a tall task, but whatever you think is best, I think, you know, I'll support.
Yeah, I support it, but it's just like, to the extent that we remind them that this is our domain and, you know, they basically need to stay in the jobs lane. This is our CDO. And, you know, we welcome their input, but they're not in charge of the hearing. You know, they're not, yeah, they can defend it.
okay.
Yeah.
Like I said, you got it, Jackie. You know exactly, you got it.
The last item on the agenda is just the announcement that we'll have our county council meeting for our planning budget is on Thursday, 5 PM. I'm second on the agenda. We're early. So if anyone would like to attend, they're welcome to virtually. I think Cheryl said it would be fine to just attend virtually if any plan commission member wishes to attend, but I just plan on going over our budget for the next year, which I could pull up if anyone has any questions.
I think as long as your salaries are indexed to the inflation rate, you're in good shape.
So with the,
Instructions from the council.
so the instructions from the council is you have to use the prior year's grids. Then they will make a decision about cost of living adjustments.
Have they stated what the cost?
There's no such thing as a cost
The
of living.
commissioners
There is no
have
such
made a
thing as an inflation rate, though. Cost of living varies according to how you want to live. Inflation is consistent.
Always use 3% or 3.5%. Did they state that as a
The
vote?
commissioners had made their recommendation, which I think was a 5%.
Oh, okay.
What was it?
I think 5.2%.
5%. And that's their official role to present their recommendation to the council. Council hasn't really let us know anything.
I'm good with
Wait
that
till
as
the
long as
very
they
end.
increase my public educator's pension by like amount.
But that's a fair question. And I guess my only thing is there any significant changes outside of like increases? Is it a flat budget pretty much? You don't need a full.
It is a flat budget. I will say we recommended or we requested and received, I think, about 26,000 for the postcards. We ended up only using about 12 or 13,000 of that, so we're returning quite a bit to the general fund. And then we have some left in the consultant budget for the CDO. We are gonna still use some of that. I think we have about 14,000 left in that budget, so
So you're essentially encumbering that cash
we
as.
might be encumbering some and returning some.
Okay.
So
So did you add a body?
if we add up.
Did you add a manpower slot?
Oh, so we're not allowed to do that at this hearing, but we will have to discuss whether we intend on doing that.
Okay, are you intending on doing that?
We are still talking about what that logistically looks like. We did meet and talk about possibly adding another staff person. I have been at, council meetings where if you should mention it if you're planning on doing it within the next year. And they have quite a few questions for you thereafter, which is understandable. I'm not sure if I have a full idea of what that position would look like in terms of exact responsibilities, grid classification, you know,
So,
I don't know.
so. And I wasn't gonna bring this up, but I am now. So you got a violations and enforcement portion. When I know, but if you look at the amount of.
Yeah.
The rules you got in place, the enforcement of those rules, if you don't enforce the rules, you have no rules. So I would like to go on the record to say that adding an additional body to do that work, that would be their primary job. As you would define it, and you would take the current definition and broaden it. And if you instead of having one person assigned to do that, you would have two people assigned to
And they get badges.
it. And it's just.
Put that in the
They
budget.
get planning
They,
department.
they get gold shield badge.
Anyway, I'd like to go on the record for requesting that you add a slot to do the compliance stuff.
I agree with that. Okay.
And a sidearm.
Oh, come on, sure. Come on,
I'll go on the record to say. that.
actually, just a taser. They just
Forward
need a
a
taser.
recommendation by the executive committee and the plan commission.
Yes.
Or-
I have a meeting on that day at 6:00.
Okay.
What do you think is the likelihood I would speak before 6?
I think it would be highly likely. It starts at 5. They're sharp. on-
Okay, I'll be attending with the hope to.
Okay.
Oh, I'll be there too, because I go at the end of the day. I
Okay.
probably won't come up to say anything unless they start trying to give you a hard time.
Okay.
I was just gonna look, call planning, so you got the treasurer's office, that's pretty quick. I think they're giving a 10 minutes allotment, it starts at 5, so you're
Yeah, 5:20.
5:20. Oh, yeah, then they have to go through the first kind of call to order, adoption of the agenda, welcome budget session, and overview of revenue and expenditures. I don't know. So yeah, maybe about 5:30, they'll probably get the treasurer up, and then Jackie probably be going on around 5:40, 5:50.
You have 10 minutes.
I'm right
It's
at
gonna be a close call for my thing, because I'm chairing that meeting, but maybe if I write something.
Sure.
it.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah,
you
you
can
don't-
online.
If
I'm
anyone
chairing the meeting, I can.
Oh, you can, yeah.
So if anyone is, I'll just look at who's quickly there before I say, you know, so and so is here. Just,
I'm gonna try to be there, but.
okay.
I'm gonna try to attend to, but I may be late, so I may.
I'm gonna try to get a fat head made up of myself so you can, like, Tammy can sit behind you and kind of just wave it around in the crowd a little bit, so my presence.
Well, as always, you do good work, and this has not been easy, but you sure are very graceful about how you're conducting the county's business, and we all appreciate it.
We'll keep
Here, here.
Yeah, thank you all for your service. So
Thank you.
let us know if we can do anything. I don't have any other reports or anything, and Mr. Schilling was on the budget hearing for tonight, so, and so was the commissioner, so
Motion, please.
thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Rich.
Thank you.